what AI is or what it actually.
Thank you. Good. Yeah, so just to build on what Nick's just been saying there, Atkins are doing some very interesting things, not just as Atkins, but they're doing stuff in the industry around standardization and taxonomy and things like that. So there's a joint group that includes Uniclass. What they're doing is they're aligning, coming up with a methodology anyway, of aligning Uniclass, NRM, and SFG20. So that's something that we're going to be involved with. And if you're interested in that sort of, I suppose to some extent, maybe a potentially geeky bit of making sure that everything glues together, maybe if you just drop your name, drop standardization in the chat, we'll include you in that. I know that some of you will have already done that, and we're building up a list of the people that are interested in standardization. But if you could, then please do so. Andrew Coldridge, yeah. Are you still with Pinnacle? Oh, you are still with Pinnacle. I've just noticed. Yeah.
Yes. Hi, George. Yeah. So I'm Andy Coldridge with Pinnacle Group. My responsibility with Pinnacle is not just new business, but it's mobilization and managing kind of handover responsibilities with developers on large complex developments, mostly for the best part leasehold residential. Bit of a challenging environment, lots of moving parts, like I guess we're all kind of dealing with. I kind of, George knows this, but Regulation 38 is kind of a bit of a bone of contention for me. R38 means that the development can be occupied, whether it's ready or not. So yeah, still very much a challenge for me, but handover is something I'm working on at the minute in regards to what it is I expect at handover when we talk about technical areas, and what we as a company need to deliver back as evidence that we've taken receipt of a technical area. And that's not just the equipment, but that's the room. Quite often the challenges are there's the equipment, but the room's not ready. Right, compartmentation is an issue, and then you find that you've got the equipment, you're responsible for the equipment, but you've got contractors in and out that room throughout the duration until it's completed. Yeah, so we're kind of putting checks and balances in place and trying to create a bit of a structure, or I am at the moment, working with a couple of my colleagues and the developers, some more leaning in than others at the moment, to kind of make handover of technical areas better. Full stop.
Yeah, because Sean Bennett's joined you, hasn't he?
Yeah, Sean. Yeah, so I mentioned you to Sean, and he did say that he's very familiar with you, and yeah, so I'd speak with Sean regularly, amongst others within the team. But yeah, so it's a challenge. I think we live in an environment, where kind of I'm expected to take what I get given. If I challenge it, it's I'm considered to be kind of delaying something and holding up a process somewhere. But I want to say, well, what process and where? What is it? Show me. So lots of different things on the board at the minute. I'm going to be honest and say I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere with it. And the change, whilst I have a passion for change, we have a passion for change, I can't influence that change. That has to be a deliverable from the developer. They have to change, and I kind of want to say they need to be on a call like this, if they're not already somewhere else. But
we've got tomorrow, we've got a BIM for Housing Development Group meeting, where David Pope chairs that, from Notting Hill Genesis, and I don't know, Richard or Gis, could somebody pull up who's registered for that? At some stage, we can just show everybody, because if you want to come along to that meeting, Andrew, or if anybody else does, that might be a useful thing to do. This is the BIM for Housing Development Group.
Yeah, I think if you could send an invite for that would be really helpful. I can forward it on to a couple of colleagues as well. I don't think there's necessarily, I think we're stricter in the HA department, with, for example, Notting Hill Genesis, for which we have quite a lot of work. We're number of contracts with them. On the FM side, it's the kind of leasehold residential side where I think it's very much open-ended and a bit loose, and variables are ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested what you were saying there about the Regulation 38 element of that. Did you say at the beginning it's you can occupy without having that sign off?
No. Well, it's issue and sign off, which is as it results in an NHBC acceptance, and the developer kind of sends it over. We've all got different objectives. That's our challenge. It's, you know, I'm looking for compliance. I'm looking for, you know, a kind of completeness around mobilization. Developer is thinking, I need people in because we need money in the bank. So how do we do that? If I'm a developer and someone says Regulation 38 equals occupation, then I'm just going to throw Regulation 38 at you. Hopefully it sticks. I'm going to tell you that I need it confirmed this afternoon because I'm moving people in tomorrow. And that's happened. And then weeks, months later on, I realised that actually, you know, through deep diving into the R38, everything that I've got, all the O&Ms, realising actually that all the documents are dated as they were at the prelim stage. Technical area might say the equipment will be or should have, and I want it to say it is, and it does, i.e. an as-built. But I've had to challenge that, and I've been told, oh yeah, we'll get as-builts over to you. Begs the question, should you occupy only when you're providing me with as-builts as part of Regulation 38 and not what was originally planned? So we've all got the same agenda. We want to satisfy our customer, our residents, our leaseholders. They pay our bill, my bill. And obviously developers want them in their apartments as quickly as possible because they can move on and, you know, particularly around year end. But so we've got a number of different factors that mean that it's a bit of a challenge. And is it ever going to, my question is, will it get better? Hopefully it will. But that, you know, as you just said, it has to come, it has to be driven, has to be led by the passion for the developer to want to make the process better.
So I'd just like to say that obviously this is billed as a PFI project or a workshop, but the reason we're talking about this is that PFI's got exactly the same challenges as we've got in social housing, and in many ways, because of the Building Safety Act and the work that has been going on in residential, a lot of the things that have been done in residential that we've done in BIM for housing are equally applicable to asset management, to PFI. And I think there's a really interesting combination here that in PFI, you've got an extremely contractually tight, regulated environment where if people don't do what they're supposed to do and create digital records, the fines are substantial. Now, that's interesting. On the Building Safety Act side of things, it's now legislative. So by bringing the two things together, we've got both what is written in contracts and what is legislative. And what I think is very interesting is in both cases, a lot of cases, people are still not following it. So even though there's huge penalties in, you know, financially for FMs and SPVs in PFI projects, there's still things still get left, and you know, Matt and Andrew Perry and others that are invited, Michael Harper there from and Anna, you know, you're all experts in PFI, and I think you would agree that the recording of variations is done not adequately robustly. And the result is that's why everybody at the moment's thinking quite heavily about PFI handback.
If at all, George, and I think it's because the impact of handback now it is actually in people's faces, and sort of some projects are now sort of or have actually gone through handback, and I think people are seeing the cost of getting records kicked into an acceptable shape. They are now sort of having quite an unpleasant touch of reality.
Yeah,
I think in the past it has been the dichotomy of people not wanting to recognise that actually it's not a cost, it's a value, but the value will only be realised, and the value of your asset, i.e. the project data in its entirety, is an asset, because there is a cost attached to not having it at the end of the day, at year 25 or sort of whatever. But the thing is, because for some people it is so far in the future, they don't care.
yeah,
They don't care. Their bonus hangs on what they do this year or what they hope to do next year, and that's it. End. It's only until people actually are forced to put their hand on the hot metal and go, oh bloody hell, that's hot, you didn't tell me, and as sort of Matt and I know, you can tell people, but if they don't want to listen, don't want to hear it because it is politically or personally unpalatable, or what they don't want to hear because they know that give it 5 years, they'll be on to the next contract, or
Yep.
sort of retired or sort of gone, whatever. They don't care. They don't want to care.
I think that comes down to, Andrew, I don't know what you think, but ownership of cost liability at that point.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't
which I
crystallise.
think-
It doesn't crystallise.
No.
But not unless something goes spectacularly wrong and you find yourself in special measures, and that's when people start to run a microscope over everything to make sure that that the contract is running as per the letter of the contract. And it's only then when funders start to get interested, because once a contract gets put into special measures, there's extra costs involved, which the FM provider, who is usually at fault, has to pay. And oh dear, if we'd have spent the money on doing what we should have done, we wouldn't be incurring the cost we are incurring now. And Pierre, if you don't like the answer if you don't like the answer, don't ask the question.
Yeah, one of the interest, just building on that. I mean, I hope everybody's in agreement that this what we're discussing here is a value, because I think understanding, getting everybody on the same page in terms of what the challenges are. If we can start to agree what those challenges are and the importance of them, then whatever solutions we come up with can then reflect that. So one of the things that's interesting, when as Active Plan, we've been involved in PFIs for 20 odd years, and initially largely on the delivery side. So working, producing room data sheets and layouts and all that sort of stuff. And then about 10 years ago, we were asked by a big FM contractor on a hospital to help them because they were under threat of a £1.3 million penalty for not keeping the O&Ms up to date. And so
that's if I were ever up to date when I got handed over.
Well, it's worse than that's exactly the point, Andrew. What actually, when we delved into it, we found two things. One is that the O&Ms themselves were in a single 38 gig PDF file.
Yeah.
which it was therefore literally impossible for the FM to keep the information up to date because you couldn't edit anything. So we put one of our programmers on it, and he reverse engineered the whole thing. Very clever. He reverse engineered what was in all the paths and things like that, and it put it in a database. So we've actually they could then replace drawings and things like that. But when we then probed it a bit further, we found that historically, when the FM took the contracts over from the developer and the main contractors, it was recognised that the O&M wasn't fit for purpose, wasn't complete, and the contractor didn't really have the appetite or the mechanisms to go back to his supply chain and ask for that information.
Well, probably because it would have meant he'd have had to have paid them.
Yeah, that's very true. And so what was agreed, and this is quite shocking in my view, what was agreed was that there would be a financial settlement with the FM. I think it was quite a substantial sum. I think it was £500,000 or £750,000 or something like that. And the purpose of that was for the FM to then use that money to retrospectively go and capture the information and update the O&Ms.
Got scooped into someone's profit line.
That's exactly what happened, Andrew.
Yep.
Yeah, that was taken as a profit in the first year.
Yeah.
And then there was therefore no money to keep it up to date. So 7 or 8 years later, the team on the ground is then under the cosh all the time to get all this stuff sorted, and they couldn't get it sorted.
I said earlier, kind of in my world, I get what I've got, what I got given. Accuracy or not, I can't confirm. And technical ability is one thing, more technical knowledge, but kind of receiving a WeTransfer doc, not quite hundreds of gigs, but a large file transfer means that we've lost that single source of data straight away. So we're and then I save it to SharePoint, and then my colleague saves it to his technical SharePoint, and we've all out the window. So we failed straight away. I do have access into what the developer uses, which is A-Site. But again, it doesn't break it out into what is golden thread or building safety or anything specific. I have to know exactly what it is I'm looking for. But the idea that that we know what I should expect. I need to know what are your deliverables, Mr. Developer. What are you giving to me, and how am I going to get it? Is a good question. But I'd quite like that to see, like building control, to take some responsibility and say, actually, under building control, we'll verify the O&Ms to make sure that you've got a set of as-builts, and that if we pass them, then building control is satisfied, it's good and proper, and that's the deliverable. Outside of that, it's very open-ended, and I've got folders and files and SharePoint systems coming out my ears with lots of information, but very rarely does it say as built. If I ask a question and someone says, I'll give you an example, CCTV, and I've got a schematic and I've got a number of drawings, I've got to see the spec, and I ask the question, how many cameras should I have? Simple question. Nobody can give me an answer because I can tell you how many I've counted and where they are, but how many should I have? In other words, I want to see an as planned and check it against an as built. And I'm going to be honest, there's been situations where overnight 3 or 4 cameras have appeared. Contractors was signed off, 8-9 months ago, someone signed it off. And there is another problem. Who's signing it off? Is anyone checking? Have you signed for something that you've checked, verified? Is it against spec? Or have you just signed a bit of paper on your desk and moved on to the next bit? And it's I just think the whole thing's a mess, on whether that's whether that's a PFI contract or otherwise. I mean, I work with private investors who purchase apartments. They come to me, they want to know, they want verification before they occupy, before they'll even lay a penny down. But and all roads, in my opinion, all roads lead back to the source. The source is the developer. The developer subcontracts to a principal M&E. The principal M&E subcontract that on their contractor might then subcontract. The question is, what have I got? Have I got what I'm supposed to have?
Mike, sorry, Matt.
Yeah, can I just add to that? Because what I find in the PFI side and PPP is when you get mixed tenants as well. So I'll get a building that's suddenly got 150 new maglock and door access systems that they suddenly say it's yours, you need to replace it. But it never existed. And the bit you've got with the CCTV is a good one as well. Because what happens is, because a lot of the facilities are medical or whatever, they actually add additional monitors because there's different reception desks. They add extra cameras for their areas, and suddenly you own everything. And it doesn't sound a lot until you start doing the maths on, for example, the maglock systems just on one building was an extra £160,000 they expected to get replacements and maintenance for free because it was always there unless you can prove otherwise.
Yeah.
So it is a massive problem because even when you're looking at your service contracts, a lot of the companies will carry on maintaining, but may not highlight there's an additional 50, whatever it is, in the building because they've agreed a service contract. And I had this at a university where I was asking a basic question: can you tell me how many alarm systems you maintain? They wouldn't respond because they didn't actually know. So
and the thing is, it has a massive knock-on effect, doesn't it, with your budgets? Suddenly you're over budget and you're asking why. Why am I over budget? Well, because we're doing more than we had thought we were going to do. We quoted for X, but we're doing Y. It's a perfect storm.
Another one on the compliance piece, though, if you start adding the door access systems and it's been done independently, who says that the fire doors are now compliant? Because you may not even know they've done it. And I'm not saying local authorities are the most famous ones who have to deal with it, do it. But you do find they add a ridiculous amount of equipment without any engagements at all.
Thanks, Matt. Pierre, just before I hand over to you, I'd just like to check just for Michael and Yogesh to introduce themselves, if you wouldn't mind. Yogesh, what do you do?
Right, hi. My name is Yogesh Luha. I'm actually an associate director with WSP now. We get involved with a lot of sort of healthcare properties, dealing with sort of PFI handbacks, and also now looking to get involved in sort of PPP handbacks for the lift properties, which operate primarily within the primary care sector. So my interest in all this is actually sort of quite interesting.
Excellent, thank you. And Michael Harper.
Hey everyone, firstly, thanks for letting me join. So I'll start recently first. So I've been with Equans as a lifecycle manager for a PFI contract over 8 schools in Knowsley for the past 7 months. Before that, I'd done 3.5 to 4 years with Amy. So very similar, PFI, 8 schools in Bradford. I actually work, I guess, cross relationship with Anne, because she works for our SPV Risolis. So listening to what everyone's been saying, obviously O&Ms, is it correct from as built and so on. The FM contractor's in a even stranger situation because I'm relying on our SPV, especially since I'm new to this contract, to give us the information. And at first, when I started on our SharePoint in general, there was no O&Ms. So obviously I panicked from my previous role where I knew everything. We were keeping up to date with the variations, and the drawings were updated. We had a slightly bigger team. We could rely on an architect and so on. But I totally agree. The golden thread, or however you want to say it, is so important. So that's my angle. Like you said, currently, not currently, but not selfishly, but currently I've got to keep the life cycle plan going. But I do hear what you're saying when people even make jokes. I'm not going to be here at the end of this contract. I'll be somewhere else. Handbacks someone else's problem. So everything you've said, I totally understand. It is being said industry wide.
Absolutely. And Afam, are you still with Enfield?
Yes,
Equans.
George, I've
Oh,
seen
sorry.
Enfield.
Yeah.
George,
Yeah,
do you want
so
just
the,
to show the development people?
Oh, yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah, do that now, Jess.
So these are the people that have signed up for tomorrow's meeting. What time is it, Richard? Is it 3 o'clock?
It's late, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 3.
Yeah, 3 o'clock. Scroll down, Jess, because there's more, isn't there? There's about 60, 70 people, I think.
Yeah. Now, to be honest, we won't get that. It would be very unusual, but we'll probably get half of them. So, you know, if you're interested in that development group, then you know you can just put development group in the chat, and we'll send you an invite to it. It will be recorded, so you know it doesn't matter if you can't make it, but just thought it would be useful for you to know. Good. Okay. Matt, do you want to take over? Oh, I was just going to say one other thing. When Andrew was just talking there about the handover information, that's a great segue into the main purpose of this discussion, and that's the use of 360 photography. Because the 360 photography and what Matt said about the maglocks, the 360 photograph is a very simple way of capturing what was actually installed, not what was supposed to be installed, but what was actually installed. And it, to some extent, it addresses the challenges that we've got, that Pierre's done a huge amount of work on over the years, with BIM models not being adequately detailed. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't still be pushing to get the BIM models complete and as good as possible. But the practicality of it is that often there's no money to be able to get specialist subcontractors to put all their information in the geometric model. Whereas if we're using 360 photography, as long as we can add intelligence to those 360 photographs, which is the work that we've been doing, and Sodexo have been doing it now for 4 years, it acts as a complementary thing to the 3D model. And then you've got a mechanism then to navigate the O&Ms. So, you know, perhaps we'll pick up on that a bit later. So Matt, do you want to talk about what you think we should be doing?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it all does come back down to the data. The 360 images are a good starting point, actually, because I'm dealing with some handovers at the minute. And one of the things I've been doing myself is taking 360 images, because it's not just what was there or what should be there. It's the interpretation of what it should look like on handback. So when somebody says you need a new AHU, or you need a new boiler, or you need this, being able to actually look at it without having to both drive down there and look at it physically, because you want the help desk reports, the service reports, is it failing, what the problems are, because arguing on BCIS, some clients will completely reject BCIS as just fantasy, and they expect it to run forever. But you've got to have something that you can say, look, your flue's non-compliant, you're going to have to change the boiler. Maybe you go for 2 smaller units, and you can actually work the plant room through the 360s. So I do think there's got a bigger bit than just the documentation at a moment in time, but it gives you a great position for dilapidations as well. So you can actually say, well, when we built this, there used to be a wall there, where's the wall gone? Just basic stuff, which then adds up to who update the drawings, who update the fire strategy, and it just grows legs, which is an important bit, because otherwise they'll just go, no, nothing's changed, because that gets back to when we're talking about people said, no, we didn't add that. It's always been there. It's always been there. So I think it is important from that. The data is put in a format that is useful for everybody, but also, as was brought up earlier, starting with your RDSs and finding your SharePoint empty. There's two major problems there before you can get to Golden Thread. Is where is all the data, and do you still have it? Now, I found myself, even with Active Plan, with one of the contracts I was dealing with actually had BIM models and asset registers and everything in Active Plan, yet the contract didn't even know it existed. I think that was one of Wilmot Dixon's, where they provided everything, but nobody's ever used it. Nobody knew where it was, and you're thinking, well, who dealt with a handover? And this ties in with Andrew's thing on the when you're told, is it fit for purpose? Is it this? Is it? And if you've got nothing saying, this is as built. This is exactly as built. Here's the picture, 360 picture, going there. The fridge is in the corner. Yes, we have got a chiller unit. Yes, here, and it's all timestamp, dated, photographic evidence, and there's the O&M. That's the argument point. But like you're saying, when you're getting tenants going, well, we need to occupy on Monday or whatever, you're going, well, I can't. I can't sign it off because there's no evidence it's been done. Because what you're talking about is the equivalent of a snaggy walk around and going, is everything ready to open on Monday? Well, the answer is no, because there's no paperwork. But that then gets into the bits that are hidden away, which also goes back to 360, like your fire compartmentation. Doing the 360s as it's going through different phases would allow evidential before the ceilings go in, etc., demonstrating that all the fire stopping's gone in. So all the hidden stuff suddenly becomes, on this date, it was there 100%. It was there. It's documented, and the O&M states this is what the fire stopping method was. This is the materials, etc., etc. But a lot of that stuff's completely missing most of the time. You're lucky if you get a drawing going, this is the containment area, and nothing about what that actually is. And nobody's ever looked at it. Nobody's going up on the ceiling and going, right, let's just pop a few tiles and see if there's actually anything there. And then you're looking across and you can see all the way to the end of the building because there's nothing at all in there. So the data is key to it, but like I say, a lot of this starts with gap analysis, because if you're taking on an existing contract or a new contract, it's the same. It's starting with a long list and going, do we have this? Do we have that? It's the same as when I used to do asset surveys. I started with a long list of every asset type, and then I'd ask the clients to tick off the ones that they want, because it's to lock people in, because later on they'll come back and say things like, we don't want any of the, we only want the main fire alarm panel. And then 3 weeks later, oh, can we have all the fire alarm panels? By that time, we've already done half the building and not documented them, but we normally document them anyway, but just keep it for ourselves. But there's a lot of stuff where people don't understand the ownership responsibilities and what that actually means. Why do you need to know that you've got 15 fire alarm systems in your building? If you ask a lot of people, they may not be able to tell you. They just say, well, we'll just go with the main panel. It's like, yeah, it's got a fault light on it. Where's it faulty? Is it even in this building? If you go to a university campus, you could have 60 buildings connected to a master panel. So which one's faulty? But you don't know which building has even got the fire alarm panels. So it sounds crazy, but this stuff goes on a lot, because a lot of people will do a test at a localized level. So you'll have the master panel, put that on test, and then go away to the other buildings. But the problem is, when that building's on fire, what tells the master panel which building's on fire? It's because it's going to be that main reception that's going to have people in there at night that will actually have the security guards, whoever is monitored, because they're not in all the other buildings. They need to know exactly where the fire is, or where there's an assumed fire, rather than going, I've got a fire alarm going off somewhere. And it sounds like quite basic, but it's just to sort of show that even in a building where it's got 15 alarm systems, if you've got one that's gone down, what's the impact on the others? Do the other panels work so it all stays as one system? Is it the fact that you can take an entire panel offline and the other ones will manage it? Or is it the case you've just lost an entire zone because there's no fire alarm panel in that area? So the data is important, but also what that data is and how it should be used. And this is why it's important, even when doing the data collection, is to make sure that we understand what that data is when it comes back. Because it's okay when people go parent, child, parent, child, parent, child, but it needs to then follow on from that to understand what each system really is. So, for example, if you list all your AHUs is AHU 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but then you've got some systems with HEPA filters in it, their criticality should be higher than the others. So the maintenance is obviously going to be much higher than the others. But it's separating those out, which often it just ends up as an asset list, not a where criticality is often not taken into account. But I won't go any more much more detail than that, because I could talk about that all day long. But the other side of that is also who owns it, which is what we talked about earlier, because it's not just when they add new things, but often in the contracts you'll have different types, type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, which will explain that it's who owns it, who maintains it, and who is responsible for it. And a lot of the time you end up maintaining and looking after tenant equipment because people don't read the contract and they don't separate them on their asset registers. So hand dryers, bizarrely, is a common one I find on healthcare, because the FM provider, SPV, may not be responsible for the hand dryers. The same with things like fire extinguishers. It depends what the contract says. So you end up spending money in areas that's not yours, because there's no trust I've come across in 30 years that says, no, that's mine. It's all right, I'll pay for that. They will let you spend your money. They won't clarify, even though they know it's not it's their equipment. And the other side of that is hearsay when people don't read the contracts, because a lot of things gets interpreted as people change, and you'll suddenly go, oh, that's always been like that, that's your responsibility. When in fact, if you do your research, you find out it's a variation and it's owned by NHS, it's owned by a local authority or something else. One of the ones that's quite good on that is for things like ponds and wild forests and things that schools do, because they often aren't ours. They're projects they do and then decide, oh, nobody wants to look after it anymore, and it's like, oh, now it's yours.
Matt, can I just bring Andrew in?
Yeah, thank you. It was just the point you picking up on a point you raised earlier, and again something that I mentioned about the deliverables. But you mentioned your handover process. I'd quite like if someone could give me an example of what your handover processes look like, because I'm trying to build one and structure it, and from a document perspective. I've created a template or a number of templates and an expectation on what I believe it should be, but I'll come back to that. Building assessment certificate. A building assessment certificate is what I get given that says the building's compliant. Now I get that. Okay. Now I might argue that maybe it's not. If I go up to the 20th floor, walk along the landing, and I can hear from the ceiling hatch that there's a draft, and it's a loud sound. It would appear on, if you was to put a decibel level meter up there, you'd get decent reading on it. And I'm thinking, where the hell's that coming from? Where's that noise coming from? And I was told it's because someone in the flat has got a window open, probably. And I was saying, but why am I hearing it in the hallway, in the communal hallway? There has to be a compartmentation breach. No. It's they probably got a window open. The door's passed. I said, it's not coming from around the door. It's coming from the ceiling hatch. If there was smoke in there, I'm guessing that instead of smoke, instead of noise, I would see smoke.
Yeah.
And but you've got the building's fine. You've got a building assessment certificate. My question, and again, it puts a huge amount of responsibility backwards, because I'm just a recipient. I'm a customer, and I get what I get given. Who am I to challenge it? But my question is, do we or should we take a building assessment certificate as a good enough evidence that the O&Ms are correct, the golden threads as it needs to be, occupation can take place because of R38? And for me, the answer is actually no, because the building assessment certificate, in my mind, doesn't cover that. So question, what does a building assessment certificate cover?
I think that's a really good question. Yeah, I don't know. Pierre, do you know?
Come in there, George. Every one of these things there's a clear problem of ownership. So Andrew, one of the issues behind this is that the building assessment certificate will have a duration. At some point, it's either going to be handed over or it's got to be reviewed for compliance. And again, these are layers, what I'll call the streams. And what happens is who issues it and what is the update. So if there were any things added or anything removed, that actually should be available connected to that certificate, because that one, the next one, has what has changed, the gap analysis, the delta between that. Now, how it gets stored, that's even more difficult, because we don't have a single CDE, and when I say single, multiple sources, but a single source where all these things are available. And I'm more than happy to have a chat to you about some of those workflows, particularly, and the part that I just want everybody to understand, Dubai has a mandate on BIM. And what it's basically saying is that the fire department on a big mall actually have the GIS coordinates for every single lift, door, fire escape, booster, connection, etc. within the mall, which means that when the fire takes place, the fire tender and the fire chief actually has a device which says that's where it is. And ultimately, it will go into an AR headset. When the smoke level is down below the waist, you'll still be able to see a green light saying that's where the door is for the lift and it's available for operation. That kind of thing is at different levels, but it's about ownership. And the data from the very beginning of the project to the handover, to the end use, including all these different parties, the local authority, the building control, etc. And I think, George, that's the part that, and Matt, that's going to be the part that's really important, to take this timeline that I've got, or lifetime, and actually put an event and who the parties are. Their names will change, but there's a role that's got to be appointed, and the handover must be absolutely clear, because otherwise the golden thread from day one is defunct. You just don't have that cascade where the actual changes can go through. When you end up like Grenfell, one single place where that's where a change was made that had the impact over the rest of the building. Anyway, that's just a thought there.
Yeah, you've explained that to me before, and it's excellent. I suppose the question I've got, because I've been on quite a few projects that have been BIM exemplars where the handover information has been reasonably complete, is then it doesn't get updated. So I'd be intrigued to know whether you've still got any contacts with the people that are actually operate, because you did that several years ago, didn't you?
3 years ago now on the mall issue. Yeah,
be interesting to know whether how well that's been adopted, and I'm sure the people that are responsible for BIM there will have the perspective that it is being used, but it'd be interesting to know from the people on the ground and the contractors that are carrying out the works whether they're actually doing it the way it was designed. Be interesting.
Certainly. So I'll get in contact with a couple of the people that are there. I think it's really important from a term that everybody's starting to use about the digital twin. And in terms of the modeling, essentially we want a building which is the geometry is correct. And Matt, what you were saying earlier is that you've got an object, it's in there, and where does it tie? The whole thing about the BIM process is that there are containers in every development, in a room, a space, a floor, the volumes, the actual zones. All of those are containers. What we want is we want the data to be able to be linked to that. It's block B on the campus. So from the fire system, it says it's block B, and that there is fundamental to the skeleton of the data. But it does mean, sorry, it just means that the systems and everything are controlled by the zone that they fit in, the volume that they fit in. And that's really important for all the documentation, because basically it's like a bin. You can put all the data connected to that, as many streams and as many versions and as many revisions. All of that can be done by database. But the spatial model is really important, because eventually that from the photogrammetry becomes your digital twin.
Yeah,
it
so
allows everything to. Sorry,
I would just sort of not challenge that, but just mention, I'm now part of a group called Start with Smart, and it's full of people that are, you know, experts in BMS systems and sensors and digital twins and all that sort of stuff. And what's interesting about that group, and there's probably 140 or so people that are, you know, from Honeywell and the like, and the geometric model doesn't really figure too heavily in that. What they're bothered about is having the locations of things, but not necessarily that being in 3D. And the part of the reason for that is that in many cases, things like building services are often better understood in schematic form. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying at all that the geometric models aren't important, because they are. But I think what we as the BIM community have done, we've interpreted digital twins as being 3D. And in the majority of digital twins, like in Formula One, and because Formula One have been doing digital twins for about 30 years, it's as you said earlier, it's the data that's important.
So George,
sorry, go on.
The one issue about when I talk about the 3D model, it's actually not that. From a communication point of view, from a visualization and an understanding point of view, that geometry of the shell, so this thing behind me, basically that you can add the layer of photogrammetry, you can add the layers of data, which give you the ability, because I can see that's a corner over there. I can click on it and I can get some information. But I do think that the important part is the relevance of the data to something that visually I can see. And this comes back, Andrew, in terms of how do you check something? You want to actually be able to go in a room and say, well, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay, and select that kind of tool. And there are tools out there that are starting to do that quite comfortably. But what it is, that communication is across the board, from the contractor, the subcontractor. And probably this is just a quick comment on the subcontractors. One of the worst things right now is that we leave stuff over. The contractor leaves it to the subcontractor. The as constructed rather than as built information never comes back from the subcontractor. They don't have the competence for it. The building control and the building control officers appear not to have much digital savvy in terms of that. And I'm blackening people's names, but not individuals. But it's just generally that makes no sense. That handover's got to be a cast in stone system where it's very clear. Here's the checklist, are all those there? There's the gap, sort it out before we move on.
And my view is that I can't see any reason why you wouldn't take 360 photos.
No, you must. Absolutely. Yeah. As many
cost,
as you need.
I think would be my response to that. Sorry to jump across you, Pierre, but cost would be a response that I would give if I'm sat here with my colleagues from the developer. I won't name them, but it would be cost. They know that it's the right thing to do, but it's cost. Again, different factors, different. Everyone's coming at this from a different angle, and it all boils down to it's the money. And we're not talking ownership and responsibility, but it's all about the money and who's going to pay for it. In my world, at some point, when a freehold interest gets released by the developer because they don't want to be responsible as a because it's a high-rise building and they are the principal accountable person, they want to remove themselves from that. So it goes to what we call an RMC, kind of residence management companies, people living in development. How And how is that transition going to happen? We've not even, I talked about it for about a year now. No one else is talking about it on my side because I don't think anyone wants to, but that's a real worry. You know, it's kind of, we talk about digital systems, but I come back to the cost.
Can I just pick up on that?
The deliverables there, George, would be a key one for me. If we know what our deliverables are, I know what you're supposed to give to me under the quality gateway, a process quality gateway. I know what to expect. And if I've not got what you've told me you're going to give me, then I'll come back to you.
Yeah. So
but we don't know.
Just to pick up on that, because I think this is really important to understand. So Pierre used the term photogrammetry. Now, photogrammetry is different as a technology, as I understand it, from 360 photos, right? So to do photogrammetry, you actually do need a point cloud, I think. And that is an order of magnitude higher in terms of cost. You really need professionals to do that, I would recommend. I know you can buy the cameras for, 5-10 grand and go around and do it yourself, but I'm not sure that's very wise. The outputs from that aren't great. So then you're bringing in somebody like, Multivista or Plymouth Craven or somebody like that, and that's not cheap. 360 photos, you can get a £400 camera and you can do a tower block in a day. In fact, that one that we experimented with Risk-Base down in, we did 360 photos in that, in one of your blocks. I don't think you're running it anymore, but
no, we just released it for a number of different reasons.
Yeah, but I think we did that in half a day. Yeah, so the cost of doing that is not huge. You're probably looking £1,000 or something like that. But the other thing is, what can you use those 360s for? So this is something that Matt and I have been looking at this last couple of weeks. One of the big challenges that we've got at the moment, we've got lots of challenges, haven't we? But one is fire strategy plans. And there's a lot of projects, or there's a lot of buildings that don't have a current fire strategy plan. And part of the reason for that is that it's actually quite difficult to get hold of fire engineers now. And even when you get them, they are reluctant to be too explicit about an individual property. So we've got a workshop next Monday where we've got several fire engineers coming to that. And what we're trying to do is come up with a much more standardized way of doing fire strategy plans using 360 photography. So if we've got 360 photography that's been created for a different purpose, let's say, for example, you've got it in your case. Let's say the construction company's got it because they want to make sure that they know what was installed, so they're protecting their own interests. They may have commissioned, as I say, somebody like Open Space or Multivista or whoever to actually do that during the design and construction period. Those 360 photos, as long as you get the agreement from the people that commissioned them originally, those are fantastic for, we can reuse them for asset management. And also, even if you don't have that, you could commission somebody to go and do one of your tower blocks for, like, as I say, probably £1,000. And you end up with something that can be used for not just checking your Regulation 38 information to be able to see what's actually been installed.
Yeah.
But it could also be used to reduce the cost of producing fire strategies. And
I get all of that, but you talk about the cost, and we're talking about retrospectively doing things, but the handover and understanding the deliverables of handover again is quite crucial. Because if I'm going to get that done, kind of suggested there, then do I pay for that? No, it comes out of the service charge money, which leaseholders pay into. Yes. Is a leaseholder going to be happy for me to spend their money on an activity which should have been a deliverable by the developer? And I would argue that all day. Yes, it should be. The answer to their question would be actually, no, it's not fair. So everything is taking me back to cost and deliverables. Whose cost and what's the deliverable? So I get where you're coming from. That's great on a 20, 30-year-old retrospective building, the one you mentioned on the coast, ideal scenario for that one. But on a brand spanking new development, I don't see that as a cost for the management company or the agent. That has to be a deliverable from the developer.
I agree. All I'm saying is that if we can communicate more effectively with the developer and say to them, look, this isn't going to cost you 20 grand. It's going to cost, say, £1,000, and it means that your exposure is protected as well. So why not absorb that? You know, so I think it would be a matter. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. You know them much better than I do, but it may be easier for the developer. I mean, I was at PLP's annual sort of soiree last night, and I was talking to quite a few. I was talking to people like Higgins, for example, who are a bit like, you know, Hill, and to some extent, I imagine Pinnacle as well. You're developers as well as operators, aren't you?
Well, Pinnacle aren't developers, no. We're just management.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
We're just management. That's all.
Yeah.
We get what we get given.
But the margins that the developers have got are absolutely, very constrained at the moment. But they also recognise the risks that they're running as well. So better information to do that would be useful.
George, if I can just come in here quickly. Sorry, Matt. The one thing about the golden thread is it's a historical set of information. And exactly like you have on SharePoint, ACC, any of the CDEs, is that you actually have an automatic versioning system. So each of these subsequent, from the initial photographic capture, individual drawings, etc., the incremental part is what the benefit is. Whoever does that, again, the costing, whatever, that's got to happen there. But every single one builds on and is then comparative to the one that happened before it. And that's so much sense, because now you've got the whole lifetime, and show me how the building changed if you wish to do that kind of thing. But it's what I call the debits and credits. You do the job once, you've got the deliverable, you put it in the bin for access, and every single party that needs to use it, whether it's the contractor, the asset manager, the local council, all have access to it. But what it means is that they then could pay a stipend to access it. It's still got to be owned and maintained, and this probably would be the developer's responsibility, because at the end of the day, that's the object that they're actually holding. They hold the CDE, and when the time comes, they would actually be being asked to transfer it, like a 747, transfer the logbook of all the data, and it's clear on, goodbye, move on. That's my principle that I would follow. Thanks. Sorry, Matt.
No, that's all right. Just as an example, this is a 360 camera and a tripod. This tripod goes about 7 foot. It's one of the folding ones. But the fact is, this is the expensive version of the feeder. You get a feeder for probably £300, £400. But one of the things I would look at, if it's from a development perspective, is just push it onto the project management team. And it just becomes a cost that they pay once, and then the equipment just stays with whoever. So if you're using the same project management team over and over again on every project, it becomes their ownership. And then with your contractors, build it in as a cost, or the camera equipment stays with the contract. So every time they're doing a new refurbishment or a boiler change or something, they update the images. So the equipment, it doesn't become a full-time job. It just becomes a task within a project, and then there's data management beyond that, which all depends on the setup. But it could be something like active plan, or it could be having it room by room, little folders with the information for each room with each image. But there's ways of keeping the costs right down if needed, because I come across the same problem regularly. That's why I buy my own equipment and just demonstrate how it could be used, and then put business cases together to try and get people to move to the actually funding it. Because the time you'll save long term it pays for itself over time. Because the big problem is, especially when you're dealing with facilities, is people don't talk about money lost unless it's something like a boiler's blown, not how much did it cost if we'd actually done it properly, did the preventative correctly, are we changing things too early? There's not enough work done on that side that actually says, well, if we actually have better data, we can do more of a just in time and get it replacing just before it fails, which maximizes the asset usage. So we're not wasting money on it. And at the same time, this is why we need better technology, which the costs will be outweighed by the amount we will save on having better performance out of our assets.
Thank you, Matt. Justin, could you hold just for about 5 minutes? The reason for that is that I think what I'd like to do is just show you some of the things that we've been doing. And some of you may have seen some of these things before, but I don't think perhaps Yogesh has. Is Yogesh still here? No, he's not. Okay. Right. I would still like to show you a couple of things that so what we've got here, we've got the golden thread. We've got the people that have signed up to the Golden Thread Task Force. Now, not all of these are 100% active, but what we've also Hi, can anybody hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm back in the room. So I don't know
Yep.
what happened there. I've been off. Yeah, I couldn't hear you for the last 5 minutes, but you're
Oh,
back.
I couldn't either. I thought it was just me. I've been messing around and re-entering the room and messing about. So,
I'm not going to ask you
right.
to go over it again, though,
nobody
George.
could hear anything, or was it?
Yeah, for whatever reason, Teams stopped working for me. So
It was all
just
of
for
us.
you.
I kept seeing people talking, and I thought they were talking to each other, not saying, I can't hear anything.
So Justin, you were going to ask something or say something. Is he not there? Matt, do you want to take control again? Are you there? It's a bit crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, probably a lot of people have like gone out of the meeting and come back in again, like I did, trying to get it to sort, figuring it's them really.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Matt's not in the meeting, George, is he? He's not
No.
here. That's probably what's
Right,
happened.
okay. Yes.
Oh, here he
Yeah.
is.
I'm there for a minute.
Did you get kicked out as well, Matt?
No, my sound went off, so I just rebooted it.
Yeah, that was everybody, Matt.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody had the same problem, I think.
Okay, it's one of those Microsoft glitches, and
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay. I will have another go at just trying to show what I was going to try and cover with the 360s. So what we've got now we've got quite a big group of software companies. I don't know how much you saw of this before. We've got quite a few different software companies now agreeing to work collaboratively. You may recognize some of those names. There's others that you may not. But a lot of them are, for example, the inspection applications, which are capturing the digital record, as it were. And what we're trying to do here is use 360 photographs in a way that hasn't been used before. Mostly people are just using it for visuals. So what we're doing is we're plugging into the 360 photo, we're bringing them into an asset library. So therefore, what we end up with is what we call smart 360s. And what that means is that they can be searchable. So we can use that to make things findable in a 360 photo. And by doing that, it means that a lot of the things that we also do, Kobe data, technical submittals, O&Ms, they can all be connected to the 360 photos. So it means that tasks, for example, can be managed through that process. And we've made it so that we can work with, as Matt was just saying there, low cost £400 cameras, or more expensive ones like the 360s, which are probably 30 grand. And then you've got things like the Nabis camera, which is 50 to 60,000 pounds. So it doesn't really matter how the 360s are created. There's just the most productive way of doing it. But we've also got relationships now with all the major companies that are producing 360 photos. And one interesting one that's moved come into that space is Viewpoint. Viewpoint have now got their own 360 solution, a bit like open space. So those are being captured for construction purposes, for quality checking purposes. So they can be used for different things. So here, for example, it may be that they're being used to for asset managers to capture what assets have actually been installed. So what I'd like our group to be able to do is just think outside the box of what sorts of things could you use 360s for. So it may be that you're using it to not so much capture asset information from scratch, which is what a lot of what Sodexo using it for is doing, but using it to validate, to test to see if what was promised has been installed. Can you actually see it? We've then got asset inspection or assessment, you know, being able to do condition assessments and things. We've then got procurement. It would make it a lot easier for contractors that are bidding or surveyors that are bidding for work to be given an explicit set of assets that they're supposed to be inspecting. So procurement teams could use it to get more clarity in terms of what they're asking for. Certainly safety, building safety, fire safety, the 360 again could be used for that. So this is not tied back to any particular software applications. It's all back to process. Disabled access is one area, but the other thing that we're doing on Monday on the integrated fire strategy and access strategy is picking up on what Matt was talking about earlier. That's maglocks, for example. So we've got Asper Abloy coming on to that workshop so that they can give their perspective on that. And the irony is, when we worked it through, fire strategy plans are there to be able to ensure that people can get out of the building easily. And the access strategy is there to stop people from getting in the building. So to some extent, they can be conflicting priorities. And if we can bring those together into a coherent whole, then we stand more of a chance of getting something right. So I would like you to think about, you know, we talked earlier about the security control systems. Another one is ventilation. I don't know whether anybody's got any ideas on that. Fire risk assessments. If the fire risk assessment has got 360 photography as well, then it just brings the whole thing to life. It means that the fire risk assessment is probably going to be better anyway. And it's also a lot easier to implement things and check that they've been done. O&M information is always difficult to find your way around. So if that's all connected back to 360 photography, then it's a lot easier to find things if you can just click on the 360 photograph and it takes you to the page in the O&M that has got that particular information or a collection of documents that goes make up a system. And the golden thread is obviously, you know, that's part of that whole process. So I don't know whether that is food for thought, as it were, as to, has anybody got any comments on that? Any suggestions as to what's missing from that? What could we add? I'll shut up now. Do you think that's useful? Hello?
George?
Yeah, carry on, Peter.
So the contribution I'd like to make here is that for each of those particular actions, like Kobe, one of the things is to ensure that we follow the standards, one on the inside, the input, what's the process and what's on the output for each of those different things, because the more standardized that they get made, the better it'll work for the contractors, subcontractors, all the different parties, because they will know what they can depend on pushing out, which is the input, and what they're going to get out at the end of that. Because that at the moment is one of the worst things in the entire industry, is the fact that we've got different standards like that. Thank you.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. But the other point, actually, thinking about that, is that the 360 photo enables you to have maybe multiple standards against a thing, depending on its context and what information you want to have against it, because often standards are, and certainly taxonomies, are designed to reflect purpose. So you may have a uniclass reference against something, and also an NRM classification against it, and an SFG, and they're all there for different purposes.
Absolutely, George. So the ownership of the different forms of information is important, but what's really important is what I call the lens, the Elton John's lenses, is that what you see is just information that you need to see. And that's
Definitely.
Really important. It gets packaged in what you're going to see. So if there's a gap, it must actually say, in terms of your vision, there is a gap. But if the information is there, it's available, and you can then use it.
Andrew Perry, would you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, it's great, sort of great idea. Everybody needs different things out of the same data for their own purposes, and that's why consistency and structure and links between the two are important. Now, I mean, in a lot of public sector contracts, for making a great play of the FMS 2000 and being able to link uniclass, so you can take information from construction cost plans, flip it around and put it into a maintenance, sort of an SFG 20 format, and you can do the same backwards, so that everybody has got the can get the outputs that they need from the same information, so long as it is held and maintained in a sustained, consistent, structured format. And I think that is the absolute key to it. Yeah, and we talk about data lakes. Everybody needs something different out of the same data lake. Insights, costs. And when we move into strategic asset management planning, to look at, do we demolish, do we refurb, remodel, how much does it cost us to do something like this in the past? It's of vital importance. And then, of course, we have got the golden thread of compliance and assurance running through it as well. So, and I'm going to throw in, I'm part of a CIBSI working group, but we are looking at digital-led maintenance, and of course, data is the absolute key to it. From the off. So everybody, so long as you can assure the data and the quality of the data, and make sure that things are linked, people should be able to get what they need out of the same data.
So, Andrew, I think the important part is ownership again.
Yeah,
is that
ownership and control.
If you're looking after the NRM data, that's fine. If you're doing GS2 data, whoever's been appointed, that must be the identifier. And at some point when you need to change, or you drop dead or something like that, tragically, it can be handed over.
I'd rather win the lottery.
Yeah. Okay, so we've just got a couple of minutes left. So my question is, if you look at the ones in maroon on the right hand side there, in some ways, what those are is a perspective on what information you need for a particular purpose. Those are purposes, I would say.
Yeah.
And if we can work together to say, right, what do we actually need in terms of information for, let's say, fire risk assessment, and how can 360 photography, for example, connected to, for example, schematics and compartmentation drawings and things like that, how can that help the production of a fire risk assessment? So what I'd like people to do is to look at this from a point of view of what information would you actually want out of the data set that is being collected, however it's being collected, Pierre. But I mean, clearly classification, taxonomy and things like that are critical, but that's only critical if if it's being used. So we need to identify what those uses are. And if we can do that, what we're trying to do within the task force is identify agents, so AI agents that can go and look through to see if, for example, if the Regulation 38 information is actually adequate. It may not be perfect, but let's just see if we have got a plan, a simple plan, for example, with the safety critical assets on them, and does it all connect back to the schedules and the whatever documentation is needed? That can be a simple agent, or probably half a dozen agents maybe, that are looking at the same information for the same purpose. And I think if we can do that, it then starts to bring us into a situation where senior directors in companies can actually become engaged, because it's fair to say that a lot of the stuff that we talk about, it goes way over the heads of people, and they don't see the relevance to them. So we need to tie it back to something that is relevant to them, which is probably money. It's probably the threat of delays, and it's probably the threat of potential statutory or criminal prosecution, indeed. But I think rather than just keep threatening that, we need to come up with some simple ways that we can say, wow, it's like ChatGPT, isn't it? You use that, and it's quite astonishing what's being achieved with it. I mean, we started over the last month or so. We started using a tool that Google developed called Notebook and I think, and it takes our it will take this discussion that's 90 minutes, and it will produce a 10-15 minute podcast, and it's absolutely amazing what that does. Now, it's not perfect, but it's very, very good at summarizing. So is anybody up for getting involved in looking at these types of use cases and these types of examples? Should we have a workshop dedicated to that in a couple of weeks' time? Who would like to? Would you like to put something into the chat if you want to get involved in agents? I think call it agents, because then we can design something around that. Put your name in the chat if you want to get involved, or you've got colleagues that you'd like to introduce to this, because that would be helpful. Sorry, Pierre.
So George, no, I will share with you, and then you can distribute it further. This thing that I was looking at, the streams, the discussions that I've had right now, but it's on a graphic, so it'll be something that can start connecting some dots. So like the Kobe there, what goes in, what comes out, the detail, some of those things that you spoke about, the schemas and etc. Those are already set. We just need to make sure that they're referred to there, and whoever picks that up and carries it, they start running that. But I'll send that through to you.
That'd be great. Thank you. Right. Okay. We're coming to the end. Is there anything anybody else would like to say? Matt, do you want to? Are you still there, Matt?
Yeah, I'm still here. I think on the next meeting, it may be worth us sort of talking a bit more on the handbacks as well, because we didn't cover much today. But I know with the hundreds of contracts coming back, it's going to be a constant theme. But the other side of that being is anybody who's had any experience on the handback, because I'm going through a few at the moment myself, and the business is going through a few more. But it'd be interesting to see anybody from different companies, different perspectives, because just to see how everybody's getting on with the handbacks, what problems they're facing, and how they're dealing with them would just be interesting, I think, for everybody.
Absolutely. That's an interesting point. What we've recently launched is an updated version of the Furniture Housing Black Box. So the purpose of that is to be able to make it easy for people to come up with things that they've come across that it would be useful to be able to report back that are problems that anonymously, so that they can report back, because the regulator, I didn't realise this until a few weeks ago. There's no mechanism for the say, you or me, to report to the regulator something that we've seen that looks dodgy, or that could impact on building safety. There's no mechanism to do that. The only people that can report things to the regulator are the principal accountable persons or residents, which seems to be a bit of a gap to us. So we've created this, and we're establishing a relationship with Cross, who do the safety reporting, to be able to feed to them things that are problematic, or that probably need addressing. So I think, Matt, we can pick up on that as well when we have the next meeting. Yes, Justin.
Just a quick one. George, is it worth me just showing a bit of background based on something Pierre said earlier, with the principal contractor being listed as the person responsible for handover? I've got this spreadsheet. Is anyone interested in seeing it really briefly?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm okay with doing that. Obviously, people may need to drop off, but I think we've had quite a few drop off because teams dropped them off.
Yeah, it was Andrew Coolidge, I think it was it. So something Pierre said earlier, which I've got here on the screen. So column R here on the right hand side. This spreadsheet is a BIM. So the reason I'm showing this is a part of the discussion that's been fascinating today. Certainly the concept of hand back. For me, that is interesting. But basically what you're seeing here is a standard document from, quote, the largest commercial property developer and investment company in the UK. So as a standard document, you can see that at RIBA stage 6 handover, by default, they list principal contractor as the responsible party for delivering the asset information for these assets. And what's been placed over the top of that by me through meetings with the project team is the actual subcontractor that's taken the place of principal contractor. That was my only reason to show for anybody that sort of, it was really Andrew earlier that was explaining that he's at the end, and I was going to kind of show this and to kind of say, well, this is in my scenario what leads up to what he gets. Yeah, this is the system that I'm involved in and am given to deliver upon. So I deliver upon this. That was really my reason for showing it, and to confirm, as Pierre says, principal contractor is who this particular company see as the responsible party until I supplant principal contractor. I think I made that clear.
So with that, are you saying, Justin, that that's a solid way of doing it, or have you got some question marks on it?
I think where I was going with that is responsibility. So as Pierre was commenting about packaging things up and responsibility, and somebody has to be tasked with it. the responsibility has been by default set as principal contractor in that scenario, and then it has been changed from principal contractor by me and my client, who's doing the fit out in this case, to the actual subcontractor as being the responsible party. I think that's the relevance of showing it and sort of giving some context and background as to how we end up in this scenario that was covered in this meeting, which is fascinating to me.
Justin, if I can just add in there something. So the original BIM management documents would then be applicable to the subcontractor. In other words, what you were going to get was originally what was defined at the beginning to be delivered at the end. And that consistency comes back to making sure that, one, they have to be competent and capable to do that as a subcontractor, which is very difficult depending on the size of that particular company and the perception of the cost. Again, something that needs to be considered at the beginning before you actually kick off.
Absolutely. And in this particular scenario, I'm the person leading the information deliverable, but I'm on another project where I'm subordinate to an information management company, and they've got a whole team of people doing this because the subcontractor list is really long. I mean, it's about 20 subcontractors, and I can see why there's a team of them handling it. But yeah, and also I think I just had an idea because I developed my own website, but an idea for sort of capturing when I get people on board, like an onboarding sort of concept, is that in some ways, as an information manager, I'm like a pilot of a plane. The plane, if you imagine all the seats on the plane, are the subcontractors, and they've all got a ticket to be on there, their contract, and they've all got something to do before they can get off the aeroplane. And I'm kind of flying that aeroplane, and I've got to bring it into land at Hanover. I've never thought of it that way till this meeting, but anyway.
So an interesting one is that you got some people in first class, some in business, some in cattle class, and somebody at the back in the loo. So it just depends on who's in what shit. Okay.
It's just an idea that came to me because the reason I thought of it is because I have to bring this stuff into land as the information manager, and I kind of thought, well, land, aeroplane, people on it, and there's people, as this meeting showed, are getting away with not delivering. So sort of, if you hold these people captive in some way, contractually or otherwise, you get my thinking. That's all. It's just an idea for a website, actually.
Good one.
Okay.
Brilliant.
That was it.
Okay.
That was it.
So what I think in terms of the next session, what do we want to cover, Matt? Do you want to just suggest it?
I think we'd do a bit actually on the handback as well. Just see if we can structure something around that. I'll have a think, see if we can put some bullet point stuff for going over. Maybe I could put it out in advance, just to see if anybody's interested in feeding into it, in the sense of if you've already had handbags, what's your experience? What were the blockers? What made it easy? What was the relationships? In the sense, did they become more strained, or was it more collaborative, or was it everybody going legal on each other and making an absolute nightmare of it?
Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for bearing with us with the technology glitch. But yeah, I think it's been certainly I've found it useful today. Yeah, let's catch up in a few weeks' time. Okay. Oh, by the way, don't forget, next Monday, if you're interested in retrospective fire strategies, then we've got that session at 11 o'clock on Monday morning, and we've got another one on AWAB's law, which is damp and mold, on next Thursday, the 13th. And finally, the development group meeting is tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So if you want to come to the fire strategy one, put maybe fire strategy in the chat. Damp and mold, put mold in. And if you want to come to the development group meeting tomorrow, then put development. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody.
Cheers.
Thanks, George.
Cheers, folks.
Thank you very much.